welcome. My name is Kelly.
My name's Jamie.
And I'm Laura.
And this is Fanimated, an animation fan podcast where we get a chance to geek out about our favorite animated media. And this week is part of the Fanimated Gift Exchange, where all of my favorite hosts are paired up randomly and assigns a movie for us to watch for the holiday season. So Jamie has chosen this week's topic. Jamie, what did you choose?
I chose The Iron Giant through 1999. The Iron Giant is the movie that we're watching for Fanimated Gift Exchange. Thank you for asking.
That is it, yes. And Jamie, why did you choose The Iron Giant?
I chose this movie because this is definitely one of those films that I watched a lot as a kid, and I did not realize how much of a favorite it was until we got this prompt, and I was wondering, like, what should I pick? What should I have other people watch and, like, share this experience? And I was, like, thinking through things, and I landed back on this one, and I was like, oh, man, it's been a while. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized, like, wait a minute. I actually love this movie. Like, this was a really big part of growing up for me. Holy cow, I can't believe I forgot some things about it. And just since then, thinking about it and rewatching it again, I've just been, like, so delighted. Yeah.
Oh, good. Yes. I'm so glad you decided to share this one with us, because The Iron Giant is one of those topics, and there have been other ones during this Fanimated Gift Exchange where I've had it on my list for a really long time of wanting to talk about it on the podcast and just never got around to it for whatever reason. And then it's so great to have all of you choose the topics that you want to talk about, and then, like, I am just as delighted, like, to get to talk about all these things. And The Iron Giant is way up there for me. And so I will say it was not one that I watched as a kid that much, but when you love it, animation as much as I do, I mean, you end up watching it and falling in love with it. And, like, I still watch it, and it's, to me, I think one of the best movies. Like, it's just, like, very solid film. Laura's making faces at us. So Laura, what's your experience with The Iron Giant?
So I'm a little bit older than you guys. So I was like 10 or 11 when this came out, and I'm a girl. So I was not the target demographic of this film when it came out. So I remember seeing it as a little, like, as a, I guess, middle schooler, not a child, as a youth. And, I was not into it. I thought it was kind of boring. It's a story about a boy and a robot from outer space. So, 11-year-old Laura was not, like, not in the repeat pile.
Not having that.
Just not worth my time. I was in middle school. I was, like, watching, like, the OC on MTV. Like, let's be real.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So that was my experience with it when I was younger. I had rewatched it when I was, probably, like, late teens, early 20s. And then just got to revisit it again for this podcast. Let me start off by saying that I think the animation is stunning. Like, as a piece of animation, it's beautiful. As a story, it's an animated version of E.T. with a robot.
Right.
Yes. I can't argue with that statement.
It's E.T. with a robot.
Right.
Harry Connick Jr. confuses me. Why does he have a soul patch? I thought this was set in the 50s. I don't, like, why is he 1990s Harry Connick Jr. and the rest of the film is set in, like, the 50s?
I will also say, for the audience members out there, that little baby Daphne is joining us this episode. So if you hear some of that, then you know. Yeah.
Just purposely leave in, like, some of the audio.
Exactly. She's here wanting to talk about animation too.
She's a radio star. Yeah.
She did watch it with me. So she was very intrigued by the Iron Giant.
Good. Oh, good. Well, with all of that said, Jamie, since this is your choice of film, can you give us a brief synopsis? And this is your spoiler warning, everybody who has not seen The Iron Giant.
Yes, spoiler warnings for The Iron Giant. So this story is in the 50s. At the peak, it's like Cold War, Red Scare. The American government is all like itchy trigger finger, that whole deal, right? Which I find wild to show in a kid's cartoon. There's this kid named Hogarth, and he lives in a little nowhere town in Maine. And something has fallen from the sky, and people start to hear stories about it. People start to claim they're seeing something, and Hogarth finds it. It's a giant metal robot wandering around the woods of Maine. And he essentially befriends this robot because he thinks it's awesome. And then some stuff happens, and the government comes to town because there's been a weird tip, and things just kind of spiral out of control from there. And it is, just like you said, very much of an E.T. story. And he and his mom get caught up in everything that's happening. And this friendship with the giant becomes a lot more fraught and perilous. Yeah. And that's pretty much it until we get to end up talking about like the end and stuff.
Yeah. So there's a government agent who comes to the town and is, trying to find out what the robot's all about and all of that. And of course, Hogarth is trying to keep the robot a secret and hides him at Dean's scrap metal junkyard. And so we've got all these really crazy characters. And of course, this giant robot. It is, for lack of a better term, just the movie that I always compare these stories to. It is another How to Train Your Dragon story.
Right.
There are lots of them out there, and I like all of them. So it is, this is a giant monster, except, they're not. Befriend them, which I know is done a lot, so understandable if it's not your favorite thing, but being as that's my favorite kind of storyline, I love it.
We'll call it How to Hide Your Robot. Yeah, that's the name of this one.
That's what it is. How to Hide Your Robot.
And I have to say, the boy befriends them. It's never a freaking girl.
That's why you need to watch The Sea Beast on Netflix.
Okay.
Because it's basically How to Train Your Dragon, but the main character is a girl and she's awesome.
Okay, then I'll be less salty. Okay.
But I will say, just jumping right into characters here, let's talk about Hogarth, because I think the reason Laura doesn't like him is the reason I like him. Because
okay.
He is the most just boy ever. The writers just
took
out everything that makes this American boy ridiculous, the BB gun or whatever, and the
yes.
Eating Twinkies at night, and just even at the end, when I think it's the funniest scene, jumping to the end, but it's the after story, and he is just roughhousing with a whole bunch of other boys.
Yeah.
He is the most boy there ever was.
They're not just fighting, they're in a fight pile. They're just in a heap of people fighting, yeah.
And then when he gets up to leave, they don't move.
Yeah.
Yes. They're just bye, Hogarth.
The heap is just laying there, and they just lay there.
Yeah.
And, when Hogarth has a giant robot at his disposal, of course he's make this car go around really fast, and he wants to play superhero and alien and whatever, so he is just the epitome of boy, and it's hilarious to me.
He's so over the top with literally everything he does. Yeah,
I will say one of my favorite things about Hogarth. Well, first of all, I've never heard of the name Hogarth before.
Yeah,
so
me neither.
What's that about?
I know.
Sidebar, what the hell is that name? But one of the things that I really like about this, and it's something I bring up a lot, is that he's a kid and he acts like a kid, and that the lesson that he's trying to teach is an appropriate lesson for a kid to teach, and it's you could only get there by having a child teach it. And I really appreciate that aspect of the character and the storytelling. I tend to really not like stories where young children are teaching adults adult lessons.
Oh, sure.
I feel that doesn't make sense to me. But I like that it required childlike trust and innocence to teach the adults this lesson, and that they really kept him a child, and the way that he interacts with everyone around him, and the way that he teaches the giant things, and the way that he experiences the story is super age appropriate, and I really, really like that.
Absolutely. Like he is seeing things as a kid and interacting with this as a kid because like around him, of course, everyone is interacting, the adults are interacting with this robot in vastly different ways. And of course the government is coming after it and everyone's scared of it, et cetera, et cetera. And so Hogarth just has like so much more childlike trust as that develops. And I'll say too, like with how he is like teaching the robot to like, you know, be who he wants to be, like you can choose who you are, and that, you know, the overarching theme of that, you know, violence is bad is like it also comes from like the adults around him. So literally does like repeat things that Dean says to him. And that feels very true to reality too, especially with a child protagonist.
Yeah, he learns from like well, I mean, yeah, I think he does learn from both what people tell him and also like sometimes has, in my opinion, a healthy distrust of what's going on. Like he's the one who points out like the government just starts shooting at stuff when they don't understand it, so we got to be careful. And like
yes,
sometimes he's very innocent and like open to just like taking in the information around him, and sometimes he's just like, no, that's dumb, I don't want to do that. Like,
yes, he's definitely strong-willed and has a mind of his own.
I really like the both sides of one. He's extremely impulsive and he's just like he does what he wants to do and he gets really excited about it, but he also just gets excited about other stuff that people tell him. He's just like he hears about maybe a meteor fell from space and he's like, oh my gosh, that's so cool, let's go see it. Or like stuff about, you know, stuff about like armies, you know, soldier stuff, even though it gets darker later in the film. But at the beginning he's like, that sounds amazing and cool too. And he's just so excited about superheroes and he has all these comic books and he just loves things, right? He just gets really, really passionate about stuff. But there's also a really strong core of like, once you get further along in the movie, he's very much I'm trying to figure out what term I'm looking for here. Like, he isn't just pushed by outward things around him. He also is like, I'm gonna decide what to do and what to focus on and what to communicate to this robot, right?
Yeah.
And that I don't know. There's something really cool about that because he's not. If he didn't have that, he wouldn't be as interesting of a protagonist. You know, he would just be like reacting all the time. And I like that a lot.
So here's my question about Hogarth. Because I'm not sure if I think I might have a little bit of an answer, but also I said he was the protagonist and part of me doesn't know for sure if he is.
Ooh,
because
okay.
he doesn't actually change that much throughout the film. Like, does he change? Because I would argue sometimes the robot might be more of the protagonist because the robot goes through the internal development.
Okay. I'm thinking through a lot of scenes where like it's kind of from his point of view, but not in the sense of he doesn't necessarily change a lot.
Because what happens from the beginning of the film, this is how you kind of look over a story, right? The beginning of the story versus the end of the story. You have to ask yourself at those two moments, what is different? And to be honest, both start and end with Hogarth being who he is, and he doesn't have a friend and a robot. Oh, I mean, he has his friends at the end. If anything, you say, oh, well, he has friends now at the end, and he has a father figure at the end. But, like, what changed, you know? And so I know that we're, like, jumping into these big thematic questions.
No, I love it.
I mean, I feel like I could argue that very, like, topically, and I'm stretching here, and this could potentially be something that is kind of like, maybe this is a weakness a little bit with the storyline and the character development, is like Hogarth is a very they try to kind of show that he's kind of like a self-centered kind of kid, right? He doesn't really listen to his mom, he doesn't listen to other people, he does what he wants to do. And that one of the things that having to like take care of the giant teaches him is like to put other people before him, and he puts the giant before him. Like, he risks his life several times to
Yeah.
help the giant. And so that's a very like straw house with no mortar, argument for it.
Sure.
But I feel like you could argue that he kind of goes through that, like he's this carefree kid. He really doesn't have a lot of, and even a really like example of how to parent. His mom leaves him alone, right? He has to kind of learn that responsibility, and that's the change that he goes through.
Yeah, I
could
take
see
that.
I could see
I
that.
could
Yeah.
take that. Yeah.
Especially because there's this is a little less serious and less coherent, but I can think of a lot of moments where like part of the joke is how the things he's saying are very much like relatable to adults, just because like he'll be wrangling the giant or that hand that got disassembled at one point, and they'll just be like, ugh, and he just has this expression of being so tired and so fed up with trying to handle this situation. And I feel like I could think of a better example just a second ago, but I lost it. There's a lot of moments where even though he is this goofy kid, he will suddenly be like, "Oh, Mondays, am I right?" or something like that. Where
Yeah.
in some ways he has moments where he acts very adult for the joke, and I think that's part of the reason why what you said didn't really occur to me so much, of that by the end he actually has started to look at the people around him and the robot especially as like someone I need to take care of and I need to put before me in ways, which hadn't totally occurred to me because I was just thinking about other stuff at the time.
Yeah, maybe Hogarth and the giant are just simultaneously learning about empathy.
I like that way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. I think that makes sense. Well, we know that Hogarth is a kid to wrangle, and who is wrangling him other than the epic Annie Hughes, single mother and cafe waitress, diner waitress. Laura, I especially want your opinions, being a mother yourself now, on Annie Hughes, and of course, as you often look at things with a very awesome feminist perspective. How does the only female character represent in this film?
I like her. I find her a little bit flat. I think that she is doing the best she can with a kid that is hard to wrangle. I think that like she's a very interesting character, because I do feel like you can see that her struggles with wrangling her child, I felt like weren't represented as like she's like not a good mom. I feel like she like in the little amount of time they're on screen, I really felt that kind of like she just wants her kids to have her kid to have a really good life, and she feels really guilty about how far she's stretched, and like kind of lets him be the way that he is because she's like puts a lot of the blame on herself. Like I could feel that in her character. I think the fact that she just like allows the government agent to live in their home is a little odd and disturbing. Like, oh, and a part of that is kind of like, are you just really that desperate to have a man in your house that you'll just like let this random government agent, develop film in your bathroom? I don't understand.
Well, they need the money. She needs a renter,
yeah.
so she probably just will take him just about anyone.
I know, but I'm still like that's
and
still.
At least he's not a rando. He's like got credentials.
Yeah. I mean,
although he's still pretty rando.
He's the worst. He's
Yeah.
the worst.
He's like, he's actually the worst. The fact that she just kind of like lets him be around her son is a little bit like
sketch.
I would agree with that.
And then like I appreciate that they like added the little bit of romance into it, right? But I also was kind of like, oh, everything's better now. I have a husband, and I'm like,
oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Understandable.
But overall, I feel like she's a pretty relatable mom, and I think that a lot of her lines are smart. I think she's used well, like when she's there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's what I appreciate is that as the mom character, she is not pictured or painted as the villain in Hogarth's mind, which often happens from a child's perspective in these films of like, oh, the mom or the parent is like keeping them from, achieving whatever goal they have, and it's like there's like struggle there, and like they have struggle and conflict, but it's very childish, it's very like we understand Annie's perspective, and we understand that Hogarth is just a silly little kid and putting himself in danger, and that is not something Annie's okay with, so it definitely at least compared to like other films, we as the audience can empathize with Annie, and we're on Annie's side, and we're not forced to have to choose like the parent or the child, which is often the case.
Yeah, I will say one of the things that, really good point you made, Kelly, is like very often they paint it as like the better parent is gone, and you're kind of left with the not as good parent, right? That like the person that did all the parenting is gone, and now the person who doesn't know how to take care of a kid is left. And I like that, like, no, she's a good parent. She's just stretched really far the way that like a single mom would have been stretched far in the 50s. Because the reality is the only job that she can get is a waitress, right? She's got this kid at home. I think that that's really unique, and I really, really appreciate that choice. And that was a really, really good point, Kelly.
Now that you mention it, I don't think they even really mention his dad, or
they don't.
There's a picture of his dad on his nightstand. His dad is a pilot who clearly died in combat.
Oh,
that's where the helmet comes from. The picture of the pilot.
Oh, what?
The picture of the pilot on the nightstand is his dad, guys.
Oh my goodness, my mind is blown.
Oh,
and we've watched this how many times, Jamie?
I don't know, 3.
And I just watched this for only the 3rd time while I was wrangling a baby, guys. Come on.
All right. That's really sad, and also adds a lot to my understanding of what's going on in their household.
That's why he has the robot hold up the car and launch it like a jet. Yeah, oh my god.
Like he's that's so cute and sad at the same time.
Oh no.
And that means he truly did grow up on his own. Like because he never knew him really.
Right.
And that's really sad.
But all that is to say, like, your point 100% still stands, that like she's the one of the two that we get any example of like how much they are trying to be good at parenting, and she is the one. Like we don't have anything to compare it against, but we can see like how much she's trying and how tired she is and how impossible her situation is, and like it's not happy because it's so difficult for her, but like it is good to see it. Like you can see how much she's struggling and literally how much she's working.
Oh yeah.
I wish she had more to do in the second half of the film.
Aside from like running around trying to keep her son from putting himself in mortal danger constantly. Yeah.
Right.
Goodness gracious. I would agree. She honestly doesn't have the biggest part of in the plot, like aside from setting up the reason Hogarth has unsupervised time.
Right. I wish that she had been brought into the giant secret earlier and like had been a part of it more.
Okay.
Kind of like with Dean.
Yeah. I think that would have I would have liked that for her.
Yeah, that would have been fun, because then she could have even more been on their side and not someone he would have had to sneak around.
Right.
But speaking of Dean, let's talk about Dean McCubbin.
Look on Laura's face.
Well, before Laura has her statement, I will say that I love Dean because he is such a comedic relief character and I mean Hogarth is hilarious too, don't get me wrong, but like Dean is meme iconic, and He is an artist. He has a scrap metal junkyard, but uses it for his art, and no one likes his
No
art.
one buys them. Absolutely not.
And he's hilarious to me. I love it. And of course, you know me, I love father-son relationships. So I love that Hogarth and him bond, and it's cute.
Right.
Okay. All I'm going to say, I agree with absolutely everything you said. I think he's a phenomenal character. He's like an adult, one of the only ways that, like, for someone who doesn't like the movie, I don't think that I could actually watch the movie without him, because he is the adult comic relief, right?
Yeah.
Why is his design is so weird. Everything else is the 50s, and he looks like 1990 Harry Connick Jr. He's got a bowl cut and a soul patch. Why?
I was so bad. Like, I looked up the voice cast just because I wanted to double check that Vin Diesel was the robot, right? And then I had to do like a double take. I'm like, Harry Connick Jr.? What? The guy who does all the Christmas albums? Like,
he was hot stuff back then, Jamie. He was a hot commodity.
No, for sure.
They're like, let's make the hot character the mom likes be Harry Connick Jr.
That'll sell tickets.
Yeah.
And let's just make sure everyone knows it's him by not even trying to come up with an original character design.
Yeah.
He's great. It's just so weird. I mean, he's got on like 90s glasses and a leather jacket in the diner. Like, I'm like, is this a time travel movie? What's going on?
Oh, I would love that, yeah.
Oh, no.
Anyway, I've said my piece.
Right.
Valid.
Dean is a time traveler, and I will hear no other commentary. Yeah.
That's it. Yep, that's what it is.
He's got a TARDIS in the backyard.
Yes.
I really love how... Okay, but I do genuinely love how they're not similar exactly, and I don't know why I keep wanting to jump to they are similar in some ways, because they're kind of not. But Dean and Hogarth both have, like, what is the quality I'm thinking of here? Because, like, they're
both like kind of outsiders, outcasts, sort of.
Yeah, I could work with that, because, like, Hogarth gets so excited about everything, and Dean doesn't, for sure. But he does, like, I don't know, when the chips are down, he does have similar moments of, like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. Like, this is how I'm gonna keep you safe, and Hogarth is like, okay, this is how I'm gonna keep the robot safe. And in some ways, when there's, like, tense moments, I see them acting similar, which is really cool to me. Even though when they're talking to each other, or when they're in these chill moments, they seem like complete opposites, right? And you know what it is? You know what it is that makes them similar? They're both just absolute dorks, but on, like, different ends of the energy spectrum.
Yes. Yes.
Like, Hogarth is a dork who's at 100% all the time, and Dean is a dork who's, like, always tired.
Dean is an adult dork who has a job. Of course he's tired. I feel like you hit the nail on the head, Jamie. And, like, what I would say to that is I think that he sees his young self in Hogarth, right?
Aww, yeah.
Of, like, someone who grew up to be, especially at the time, like, he grew up to be an artist. He was probably, like, a crazy kid who brought squirrels into diners, right? Like, he was probably kind of a crazy kid with not a lot of friends. And I think that first scene where they meet each other at the diner, like, says it all, right? That I feel like he sees himself. And that's why he's like, I don't really care about this giant, but I care about this kid. And is this kid. And I remember being the kid that, like, no one understood.
Oh, that's...
Yeah, I love that.
Okay.
I love that.
That's a real... The beginning scene, you mentioning that in particular, is because that's when he says, he sticks up for the older guy. And then he says, like, I didn't actually see it, but I told them I did because us weirdos have to stick together, or something along those lines, right?
Yep.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. And, like, that's... Somehow it never occurred to me that line is actually about him and Hogarth. I feel silly for not realizing that.
Yep.
I mean, that's such a good scene for so many reasons, but yeah, like they make you love Dean as a character right away because the audience has to attach to Dean and his sympathetic nature towards Hogarth, you know, so that later on, like, it just is so much easier to trust him as an audience member.
And he's Harry Connick Jr.
Yeah.
LOL.
We like him immediately.
All right. Well, we've also, we've mentioned Kent Mansley, but we got to talk about
Mansley.
him. Kent Mansley is a paranoid federal agent who is the main antagonist of the show.
Yeah.
He comes in thinking that his job in Rockwell, Maine is going to be a quick one, and soon discovers that no, there actually is a giant robot, and he makes it his mission to get the credit for, taking care of that. And of course, his immediate response is to just go ahead and destroy him. So he's quite the character as well.
Oh my goodness, he sucks. he's awful.
I feel bad for him.
Oh really? Oh my goodness.
As an adult, I feel really bad for that character.
Like he's just trying to do his job.
He's just trying to do his job. The world's got him down, right? He's just like, he's had one crap assignment after the next. Like, no one pays. He's probably underpaid. He just gets sent around after these things. Russia's gonna blow up the world. We know this. And he's like, all I'm trying to do is stop that from happening. Like,
right.
If you were a government agent at the time,
right,
and a giant robot landed in Maine,
you would be very concerned. No, I do. Yes.
Should you steal things from children and develop photos in guest bathrooms? No.
Right.
But
right.
Do I understand what drove him to the edge of insanity? Sure.
Yes, because he does get to the edge of insanity at the end because, spoiler alert, yeah, they're all like in the town and the military's there and everything's crazy and there's a missile locked on the Iron Giant and Kent steals the radio and just says fire. And
do it now, yeah.
I didn't remember how dark this movie is. This movie is dark because there's so many Cold War things going on and also violent things, and then this part where basically this bomb is going to hit their town and they're basically all facing imminent death. They're just like, well, this is the end. That's really depressing.
Yes. Okay, it's like, it would be a really dark scene if it was like all of them running to evacuate and escape. That would be bad. But it somehow feels even worse to have them like bring it up as a possibility and then say, no, it wouldn't matter, actually. Like, we're already going to die, and running away would not actually get us out of the radius. Like, I kind of forgot I was watching a brightly colored animated cartoon for a second. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Thanks for dropping that bit of information. Yeah. it's rough.
It's a lot.
Yeah. It does set up the ending, which is one of my favorite endings I think I've ever seen, because like, they did the whole Superman motif earlier, right? When he's looking at the comic books and stuff. And they've already given you the you don't need to be what, like a more general version of it would be like, you don't need to be what you're told you are, you can choose who you want to be.
Yeah.
So they've given you both of those things at different points in the movie, and to put them together at the end, when the giant hears you are what you choose to be, and then he says out loud the word Superman before flying into the bomb to save everyone, I was crying. Like of course part of it is my childhood, right? But also, like, it's so good. It's so inspiring and sad at the same time. Because you can look back over the rest of the movie and be like, oh, yeah, I see all the different paths coming together now. This is it.
Exactly. Like that's what I love. Is like so many times, like they really do like they always bring things back around from the beginning of the film, and then like give you the emotional punch at the end with it, which is just like great for me. Like I love that. And then also personally, I'm just a fan of happy, sad endings where
Ooh,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
day is saved except at a cost. So there's a consequence. And so this is like a big consequence. And it's just like it feels right, even with like the kind of tease at the end that the pieces are slowly coming together. But yeah.
Oh my gosh! And he tells him the thing he told him at the very beginning, which was "I go, you stay, no following." And then he flies away, and the Hogarth is like, "I love you," and it's so rough, man. It's so rough.
Bringing it back around. They always bring it back around for the emotional impact.
Yeah.
Laura?
I was just gonna say, like, I love hearing you talk about it, Jamie, because I know that you saw it like as a little boy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that probably was one of your first exposures to that type of ending and that type of like
Right.
character reveal, like the giant
Yeah,
learning
yeah.
something. I will say that like watching it again now, it's a motif that's repeated over and over and over, so I didn't have as much of an emotional, like, it reminds me of Tafiti and Moana, right? It reminds me of, I mean, literally, even when he's like, you stay, I go, like, even just the voice, like, you guys are gonna hate me. It reminded me of the big Gingy in Shrek when he's like, be good.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
You know, just the like giant thing that, you know,
Yeah.
everyone thinks is bad and then is good, and it like kind of gets sacrificed.
Okay.
And so
that's also iconic though. Why would I feel like the Gingy moment is a bad thing?
Well, just because that's kind of comedic rather than like
No,
emotional.
I'm totally messing with you. Yeah.
But I love to hear, like, because for me,
Yeah.
I was like, yep, okay, yep, we're learning this. But like, I hadn't really thought about, like, yeah, if you were a little kid and this was one of your first exposures, like, that was
Yeah.
a really, really strong, very like adult version of that storyline and that character change
Right.
for a little
Right.
kid to see. Yeah.
The interesting thing about that is like I don't think I had realized. Well, rewatching it again this time, I didn't realize that like the nightmare version of the giant where he like goes all crazy lasers and everything, that actually doesn't show up until like 50 minutes or an hour in. So most of the movie you haven't seen it at all. And like I don't think it occurred to me as a kid that like that is like I don't think it occurred to me that was the stakes, maybe, or it didn't occur to me that was his internal struggle, I guess, as this character of the giant. Like that's the thing that he is trying to reconcile or trying to decide, like, who do I want to be. And there's the comic scene earlier where he's got like yeah, this comics character is a big killer robot, but that's not you. You're more like Superman, right? And then later on we get this robot design that does look like that big killer robot with lasers and everything. And like I think I must have just been really young because I don't remember putting these pieces together in a way that I could recognize like the flow of the whole story. So watching it more now definitely gave me a better appreciation for like that is the arc we're looking at. That is the like I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, but it really made me happy.
Yeah, the giant has the most obvious like internal development as a character, and which is strange for me to say as someone who's not usually a fan of robots being emotional characters. I don't usually emotionally connect with a robot because they are robots. But I think part of it is like Hogarth says at the beginning, like, oh, well, you have a soul too. And so it's kind of like, okay, we're going to pretend that this robot has a soul. And that'll help me.
How dare you?
Suspend my disbelief, I guess, a little bit. But yeah, I mean, the giant is has the struggle of basically choosing who he wants to be instead of how he was made to be. and he is able to overcome that programming and do what he wants, which is to save the town versus destroying it. Any other like thoughts before going into production stuff?
I am gonna say that like there's certain things that you can do with a story that like ruins the entire thing for me, and it can just be like a very small moment. And the hunting scene is really offensive to me and really poorly done, and it ruins the entire film for me. I think that the use of recreational hunters hunting like a deer as like an example of how guns are bad is like really, really awful and inappropriate. That just comes from the fact that my husband and I are subsistence hunters, and we like don't buy beef because we collect all of our own protein from nature. And so anytime that like I just, and especially in a kids movie, like I just find that to be like, that's really political and reductive and not helpful. And so I think that also like, I remember that distinctly from the 2 previous times I watched it. And this rewatch, I was like, and I'm checking out. So that being said, like, that's the type of thing that it makes the like, okay, this went from like a cute story about not judging people to like, now we're really, really judging people.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully this didn't feel like too much of a coal in your stocking rather than a gift.
It did not feel like, you can tell that I am like, I suddenly just got very, very heavy and very opinionated right at the beginning of this podcast. But I think that is the reason, like I needed to get that out of the way, because I just don't want you guys or the listeners to think that I'm like a Debbie Downer about it. Like, I think that it is a really strong film. I just think that it was one like little choice that makes it like difficult for me to watch.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
I think I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally respect that, because it is kind of like thrown in there as like we need to introduce death to this robot. And it's kind of thrown in there. Just another like end cap thought about the story as a whole. Like I really do, I mentioned this, I think this is one of like my favorite films, and I do want to just like emphasize that, because I think the writing is really, really tight, and like all of the like the pacing is fantastic. It's funny, it's always moving, and like the characters, you know, that you're supposed to be emotionally attached to, you are. Like, again, even when I'm not usually emotionally attached to a robot, I am. And I'm emotionally attached to Hogarth and Dean and Annie. Like, it is a very simple story. It is a very, like, well-trodden path, but it does so really, really well. And that's why I think it's just, like, such a solid film.
And I will say, as a segue into your production thing, it was clearly directed by Brad Bird.
Yes, so
like clearly directed
so
by Brad
clearly,
Bird.
yeah.
Yes.
And so this was actually the directorial debut for Brad Bird, and what a debut it was. So this was, like we mentioned, 1999, Warner Brothers. And the story is based off of a book by Ted Hughes. It kind of went through a lot of different iterations before it came into Brad Bird's hands. And so he wrote up a basic storyline for it. The script is by Tim McCanless. At first, Brad Bird was not super excited to have another scriptwriter. He kind of wanted to write it himself. But after reading McCanless' Secondhand Lions script, he was like, okay,
whoa,
I will have this guy on board.
Holy cow, that's another movie that like I loved growing up as a kid. My parents adore that movie. Interesting.
Yes.
Okay,
it's so interesting. So
wow.
And at the time, Brad Bird was struggling with the death of his sister Susan, a very unfortunate circumstance where she was shot and killed by her husband. And the original book itself was written by Hughes for his children after the death of his wife, the suicide of his wife, Sylvia Plath. So between Hughes' motivation for writing it and Brad Bird's place when he was working on the film, like it definitely kind of comes through of like the violence is bad is a very simple topic.
Right.
But like it comes from a very like real place.
Yeah. Wow, I think I might have heard that bit about Brad Bird and like part of why he was writing this, because I remember hearing something about like this can't be the way they put it because this sounds a little bit silly and I can't remember the right wording, but it was close to what if a gun didn't want to be a gun. It was something like that.
That's kind of the thought behind it, is that the giant is a way to explore a gun who doesn't want to be a gun.
right. Like a weapon that is aware of itself and thinking about things and wants to be something else. Yeah.
Yes. So that's kind of some of the real life things that were happening to kind of inform that message and that theme. So I will say, like, going into just like the animation in general, like it still holds up. This is 90s
really
CGI, and it just holds up really well. The way that it's integrated into the rest of the 2D film, like, is really spectacular and works phenomenally. Because the giant robot obviously is a CGI, along with a lot of other like different vehicles and stuff like that. And for the giant, at least, they basically animated the giant on 2s, which is 12 frames per second instead of like the usual 24 frames per second in like 2D animation. So they kind of took out frames, because CGI is like you're kind of doing it all at once. I don't know, but like they basically backed it up a little bit, from my understanding, to make it fit a 24 frames per second like 2D things. And so it's really interesting to watch, because like this whole film is just this CGI robot interacting with 2D characters. And so often that looks so choppy and weird, and just like, and you can just tell that they don't belong in the same universe. This movie, they were somehow able to make it look like they belong in the same universe. And it's so good. Like, it still holds up. It just blows my mind that this is a 90s film that still holds up. Like, there's some times where you're like, oh yeah, this is like older, but like it just still works, and it's really cool.
This is not a joke. Looking back, of course the giant is CGI, but like never crossed my mind until now. And of course it should have, because it's obvious, but I somehow never even a thought of that until this moment. So, holy cow. Okay.
I love that, Jamie. This is why I love your episodes. I feel like whenever I listen to your episodes, I want to watch movies with you, because I feel like you just watch them with so much joy. And you're like, I wasn't even thinking about that. I'm like, I want to watch a movie with Jamie. He like just has the best time watching movies. Oh my god.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, sidebar.
Thank you.
But,
and making a note to invite Laura to our next anime movie theater.
Yes.
I will say, Kelly, this movie, when you say holding up, it passed my 4K smart TV test. So we have
all right.
Yes, when you say it held up, it looked so good.
Oh my
That was
gosh.
the first thing I was thinking. So Jamie, you've heard me say this before, probably on our episodes, that we have a 4K smart TV.
Right,
a lot of times when we watch, it's fun to watch animation on, because it either points out like, oh, this is old, or like, oh, this is like when you watch like Frozen,
yes, and you're like, this is what this TV is made for. Yeah.
Ooh, gotcha.
So I'm watching this movie, and just the first scene of like coming through the atmosphere, I was like,
yes,
hold up, like this looks really, really good. And I had to re-look up and confirm. I was like, this was made in like 1999, right? Like, I had to, like, I wasn't sure. And then I'm like, has it been remastered? Like, what is going on? And I was streaming it. It's available right now for free to stream through Roku TV. So I wasn't streaming through like a high-end service or anything. Like, it still looks so unbelievably good.
Oh, that is so good to hear. Yeah. It truly is. It's a masterpiece.
Yeah.
Can I talk about that opening again? We were supposed to move out of scenes and into production, but I totally forgot because I really wanted to talk about the opening. So I'm going to do that super quick if that's all right with you. Because, so, like, I really like the opening credits where you just hear, like, the radar ping and, like, some noise in the background that's very clearly, like, 50s technology, government, da-da-da-da-da. I like that. But when it goes into, like, there's the... What looks like a meteor falling, we get that, we get the shot of Earth, but the scene of the guy, the sailor on the boat in the storm, and he's having a bad time, and then he sees the lighthouse, and he's like, hey, it's the lighthouse, and then the lighthouse turns and looks at him, is so good. I was, like, jumping up and down. I was like, this is the most iconic movie opening, and I love it so much.
It does such a good job. Like, let's lay the groundwork for the atmosphere of this one.
Right, because there's so many, especially in the first half of the film, there's so many moments where they really play up how intimidating and scary the giant is from everyone's perspective. Like, until we kind of move into the part of the movie where, like, you realize that's not the point, you know? But like, we want to see it from their eyes because that is how they're seeing this, right? And, like, to see the one light clearly become two lights and then to suddenly realize that they're actually eyes is so good. I was losing it. Yeah.
So good. And you know, with all of our ranting and raving over how good all of this, you know, they're clearly storyboarding it really well, animating everything super well for all these epic moments. This film was completed in half the time and half the budget than a normal animated film of this time.
What? How? Okay.
I know, wild. So a much smaller team than normal, and Warner Brothers had just come off of the failure that was Quest for Camelot, although, of course, I will argue that is a great film.
Wow, I forgot about Quest for Camelot. Oh my goodness.
But Warner Brothers pumped a lot of resources into that film for it to kind of flop. And so they were not given as many resources for this one. The production budget for The Iron Giant was $50 million, compared to other films at that time, like Tarzan, which was also 1999, had a production budget of $130 million.
Wow.
And DreamWorks' 1998, The Prince of Egypt, had a budget of $70 million. So $50 million is much less.
Substantially, yeah. Wow. Okay.
But so kudos to all of those, not just animators, but literally everyone who worked on that film, because they did a lot with what little they had. I will say that Warner Brothers also made a mistake in not marketing for this film enough. Because, again, they were like, oh, animation, whatever. They didn't realize that they had such a successful film until too late. And so it flopped. It flopped at the box office because they didn't market it enough.
I will say, so I'm old enough that I still remember the marketing or lack thereof of this movie. Because I was just old enough. I was about 10 when this came out. And it was definitely on like lots of like coming to theaters, like previews of movies that we would rent. And I remember seeing ads for it on TV. The little marketing they did was done so poorly.
Oh, no.
Because one of the reasons that I didn't, because I say like, oh, I was more into like, you know, the OC and being cool. But like, when you compare it to the things that came out that year, like I definitely saw Tarzan, right? I was still young enough to like, we still went and saw that stuff. And that was, they'd like show us that stuff at school. Like it's movie day, you know? The Iron Giant, like when you watch it compared to if you go back and watch some of the trailers, like they did such a bad job of trying to explain what this movie was. This movie was like, it's a boy with a pet robot. Oh. You can fly, and then the giant runs through the woods, and then coming to theaters, you know, and it was like,
that's it.
Okay, like, that was the line was played over and over, was the you can fly line, and it just was so not appealing.
That's also the
and
end
not
of
interesting.
The movie, I think.
Yeah, like, Well, it's the end of the movie, and it's not even an original part because I'm sorry, that is the part where it's like we're watching E.T. again.
Right.
Or they fly away magically to escape at the last second, original,
I mean, they definitely, E.T. was an inspiration. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Oh, gotta be, yeah.
But yeah, the marketing of this film was just so poor, especially in a year where like the other big players that came out that year, so Prince of Egypt and Tarzan, were both boy movies. They were about boys, right? That when you looked at the marketing of it and you looked at who the characters were, they were all movies that like the leads were men. So they're boy movies, quote unquote. And then the girls just go and see them. So it wasn't even unique from that standpoint in that it was like up against a princess movie. So like, oh, I'll take my little boy to see the giant movie instead of take them to like the mermaid movie, So just like the entire thing all around, it was just so poorly marketed and just like set up for huge failure.
Yeah,
from a marketing standpoint.
It was not set up well. They did not, and the studio realized it. They realized after like they had like their what do they call the initial pre-screenings, and their feedback from audience members for those pre-screenings were better than they've had for any film in like 15 years. And then they realized, oh no, this is a movie that people are going to like. And we didn't set it up for any sort of marketing at all. And I read that
oh no, people are gonna like our expensive movie.
Well, they're not expensive movie, not it was not an expensive movie.
Oh, that's but like, oh no, that's what I mean. People
goodness.
like not expensive. They still spent $50,000 million on it.
Yeah.
Like, oh darn it, people like what we did.
Darn
what
it.
do we do now?
Oh darn it, we didn't set this up for success at all. And they were like, oh, we can delay the release to like get this rolling a little better, get some like toys in McDonald's or whatever. And Brad Bird was like, you guys have had 2.5 years.
Right.
And so they released the movie like they were going to, and obviously did not do well. But just like with so many other films that flop in the box office, that doesn't mean much of anything, because this is still a fantastic film, and it was just like super critically acclaimed, and it just still holds up. It's 2022, it still holds up.
That is kind of amazing, honestly. We don't have a ton of modern 2D animated movies to compare it to, but like there are so many moments where you just look at it and you think like, this, I don't have to worry about caging this with, this looks good for its time. Like, you don't have to do that. This just looks good. Yeah.
So I highly recommend watching The Iron Giant if you have not already. If you're listening to this and just wanting to hear our voices talk about something you don't know anything about, then great. Thank you for coming. But please watch it. So please watch The Iron Giant. It is phenomenal. I need to like own it in my library because it's one that I would definitely like want to reach for more often.
Yeah.
It's okay.
And you know what?
Excellent.
That's what Fanimated Gift Exchange is all about. Yeah. We're stretching each other's like repertoire. We're watching random things that we might not always choose for ourselves. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jamie. I might re-gift this to someone else.
All right. This is our white elephant gift. Yeah.
Yeah. Re-gift it to me, Laura.
I can just give it to Kelly. I know who to give it to.
Perfect.
Great. Yes. Well,
what am I going to do with this fruitcake? Yeah, exactly.
The fruitcake of animated movies.
I will eat it. I will eat the whole thing.
Yeah.
So with that, thank you everyone for listening. You can go over to patreon.com/Fanimated to become a member of the Fanimated crew. Thank you to everyone over there who supports the podcast and makes this podcast possible. We hope you get more than fruitcake this Christmas. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Fanimated Podcast to stay up to date with all things animated. And don't forget to leave a rating and review telling us what you'd like us to watch next. The music is written by Jamie Krause. The art is done by myself. You can find me on Instagram at CandorDraw. We will be back. These two will be back with me next week to discuss Laura's choice, Laura's gift to us all. I will give you a little tiny hint. It is, surprising no one, a Disney movie. All right, so we will talk to you next week. In the meantime,
stay tuned
and stay animated.
Let's move on to single mother Annie Hughes. Laura, I need your thoughts.
Daphne just barfed all over me.
Oh
Oh no. Okay.
Oh,
Speaking
Daphne,
of single
no.
mother, no, I'm not a single mother. No. Okay, she almost just ate my earring. She's crying. Hold on, just give me. So let me say I relate to Hobart's mother in a deep way in this very moment.